I usually bring this as a prop. This is Taiwara or Chi Taiwara. It's from, among others, Dogon of Mali. Also the Bambara people. Okay, ritual object representing an antelope. Chihuahua Initiation Society uses Chihuahua mask as well as dances. Why isn't the graphic showing up? Okay, all right. Primarily with agriculture to teach young Bambara men, social values as well as agricultural techniques. So while there's several versions of the story, the discovery of agriculture is credited to the hero Chihuahua, a half antelope, half human figure born from the union of the sky goddess, Musukoroni, and an earth spirit in the shape of a cobra. The Chihuahua came to earth to teach humans to sow crops and thus is honored as both sowing and harvest festivals. So this being is a supernatural being that's a shapeshifter. And part of his primary mission, or its primary mission, is teaching humans the difference between food crops and weeds. Okay, so you could think of a weed as something that you don't know the use of yet, right? Because there isn't necessarily any waste in nature. Chihuahua itself is usually represented as a roan antelope with an almost human face, but also takes shapes of other creatures and emblems of farming. The hero descends from the sky goddess and thus represents the sun. His body is often elongated and short-legged to represent the aardvark who burrows into the earth like a farmer. Its high horns echo the stalks of millet. Oh, I know why it's not showing. It's a PC. Okay. High horns echo the stalks of millet, and it stands as a dancer clad in a mass of raffia stalks to represent both flowing water and a bountiful harvest. So there's a zigzag pattern. I actually have one in my office, so I guess I should have brought that. The zigzag patterns echo the movement of the sun across the sky, and the penis of the male figure stands low to the ground, fertilizing the earth, also plowing the earth. Chihuahua figures almost always appear as a male-female pair, combining the elements of fertility of humans and fertility of the earth. Female figure usually carries a young antelope on her back and is said to represent human beings carried by the Chihuahua hero, as well as a newborn human carried on the mother's back. So the idea among these particular folks, in terms of the social hierarchy, farmers are the most important people because they provide food. So Chihuahua taught the humans the difference between food plants and weeds, plants you don't know the use for yet, but which play a part in the ecology. So understand the ecology. So like the ecology, that is the natural world, humans play a part in it, and all humans have a part to play. Okay, the economy is an artificial ecology based on rules which seem mystical yet can be understood. Now, where I'm going with this is that wisdom is food for thought. All knowledge is potential food. When Freire is talking about the banking system with legitimate knowledge, he's saying some people unjustly keep knowledge, especially knowledge that could grow you as a human being, to themselves and make it harder to get. Okay? You still have to survive. Okay? Which is knowledge that they may not have. This is often why people from ghettos, if they survive that environment, often become more intelligent than the people that are oppressing them. Because if they don't, it could kill them. Now, certain forms of knowledge that are basically raw survival, like knowing your surroundings, being streetwise, being able to make something out of nothing. The problem is, you may make $10,000 in a month doing the illegal drug trade, but you can't put it in a bank. They keep that knowledge from you. You don't think about investing. Yeah, if you can get a Swiss account or a Cayman account, there's rules with that.
Recently changed the Swiss bank accounts where they can get in.
Yeah, right, for exactly that purpose. But notice they don't destroy the Swiss bank accounts. They don't destroy HSBC. They don't destroy Chase. They don't destroy US Bank when they money launder for drug dealers.
Corporations own those
Yeah.
entities.
All right, so the economy is an artificial ecology based on rules that seem mystical but can be understood. So you must learn to separate what is food from what is weeds or junk. So cultivate an inner garden which grows food for thought and spiritual nourishment, where spirit is your energetic relationship to the rest of the universe. So if life is a school, what are you learning? What are your sources of information, and what is true for you, and what is nourishing you? What strengthens your voice? So part of teaching people about hidden curriculum, basically, one of the central points of hidden curriculum is, where is your voice in the story that's being told? Can you find your voice in the story that's being told? If the hero telling the tale is leaving your story out, where is your people's voice in the story? Were they there? All right, so Ghetto Island, off the coast of Italy, actual place, right? So it's not just Polish. But consider, there were no European Jews before 7th century AD. So in 1500 or 1400, 700 years later, okay, you can have mixed race people who look blonde hair and blue eyes with the first generation African mix. But some other folks are going to be swarthy. And in the Inquisition themselves, they're basically talking about race as an issue with Jews and Muslims. That meme has spread throughout all Europe. So you could make a case for it being racism, not just religion, at that point. So Ghetto Island was a place that you were basically abandoned like a prison with the express intent that you die. They send you there to die. And they exported that concept to the Warsaw Ghetto as well.
Did they throw them in with lepers? Or?
Yeah, sure.
So they wanted them to.
Yeah, they wanted them to die. Yeah, definitely. So, what fertilizes and waters those crops, thought crops within your mind? So understand, the economy is artificial. It's created. It's not an accident. It's created to be hostile to some folks and friendly to other folks. And sometimes the rules are invisible. So understanding how that works, if knowledge is a form of power, you need to acquire the knowledge that makes you powerful in a hostile environment. Sometimes you gotta be like a camel. Keep your water with you. Internally. All right. So some of the crops that I suggest, especially in a racially hostile environment, a bow tree, or a baobab, or a fig. Some of the most ancient statues, so do you get those references? what was the Bo tree? Well, it's in India, and it's where the Buddha attained enlightenment, and it's still there. Did I tell you the story of the Buddha? Gautama Buddha, was a black prince, because this is India. India was a colony of Egypt. Black people. He was a prince who every day, because, princes are rich people then, right? So every day, when they leave the palace, his family has the street swept of all beggars, dead people, and they're just cheering crowds. Right? So every day when they go out, Buddha just sees all these happy faces. So he's like a kid. He's like a teenager. Rich prince. So one day, like teenagers will do, he sneaks out. And he sees his first dead person. He sees people starving. He sees diseased people. It tripped him out. Wow. He could have gone, sucks to be you. I'm a prince. I'm living a fat life. But he decided he was going to eliminate human suffering. And he's going to figure out a way to eliminate human suffering. And went through, a bunch of different trials and tribulations, but finally sat under this tree and meditated. And basically had all these visions, etc., etc. And afterwards, he achieved enlightenment. He became the Buddha, basically eliminating human suffering, generating the Four Noble Truths and the Eight Pathfolds to Enlightenment. So first of the Four Noble Truths, life is suffering. Okay, life is suffering. But by understanding the means of your suffering, you can achieve liberation. So if you're being oppressed, you have to understand how you are being oppressed. He was a prince. Wait, I'm getting all the food I need to eat, and so on the way to the path to enlightenment, he's starving himself. How can I eat if other people are not eating? Okay, and there was a branch of ascetic, spiritual people basically fasted regularly, right? He nearly died. In fact, there's statues of him like a skeleton. He starved himself to death. He was on death's door. And this poor woman, basically saw how starving he was and took her last meal, made him soup, and fed him. And he was touched by that and said, okay, maybe starving myself isn't the way to go. Maybe there's a middle path. Maybe I can serve others. So, there's other things. So, go back to slide. Thanks. All right. A Bo tree. Okay? Meditate and then act on alleviating oppression, especially if you live a life of privilege. Which, if you're living in America, we don't have an overpopulation problem. We've got too many Americans. I'm saying that as an American, having gone to Africa and other places. Okay? 5% of the world's population in America uses 50% of the world's resources to support our lifestyle. Okay?
We have 50% of the world's lawyers.
50% of the world's lawyers, too. Yeah. All right. There's some good lawyers. I have some good lawyers in my family. But, yeah, there is that, too, right? So, a Bo tree. How do you achieve enlightenment? And meditate on the ways that you can relieve human suffering. Okay, by knowing certain pretty hard facts. Life is suffering. And part of what happens, one birth in America is the ecological equivalent of 25 to 30 births in India. The amount of damage that an average American kid will do in his lifetime just by living.
Carbon footprint.
Okay? Carbon footprint, the garbage footprint. Natives basically say, look, we didn't have garbage before 1492. But look at just all the stuff that we use just in packaging that we throw away. There's an island bigger than Texas of our garbage, or the garbage of people that want to live like us.
How big is
It's bigger than Texas now. It used to be bigger than England. It's bigger than Texas.
You can walk on it.
You can walk on it. Wow.
You can land helicopters.
Floating in the ocean.
Floating in the ocean, yeah.
Killing all the fish.
Fish, fowl. So, the baobab tree. Baobab tree is another tree that grows in Africa that's huge and massive and is a symbol of enlightenment. A fig tree. When Yeshua was talking about, by their fruit shall ye know them, it's quite likely that, given that the Garden of Eden was in Africa, that the tree of the knowledge of good and evil was a fig, not an apple. One, because apples don't grow in Africa. Two, fig fits the description of the tree of life, and when you understand that in Aramaic, his language, good means ripe fruit, and evil means unripe fruit. And with a fig, it's easy to tell. Unripe fig is hard. A ripe fig is soft, and you can tell the difference. A ripe fig nourishes you. Unripe fig is not ready to eat. Knowledge and good, the knowledge of good and evil. Okay? The fruit are coming from the same tree. Okay? One is ripe, one is not. The unripe one will ripen, but you can't ripen it, but you can recognize the qualities. All right? So when Buddha talks about duality, Christ talks about good and evil. Okay, they might be the same thing in the same person, not about development. It might be about, okay, you can't change the evil person. You have to accept them where they are and instruct them or ripen yourself for them to achieve enlightenment. And that's part of the Bodhisattva vow within Buddhism. Having achieved enlightenment, hey, you can get off the wheel. You can choose not to incarnate anymore. But you come back. A Bodhisattva is a person who chooses to come back. And the basic Bodhisattva vow is, sentient beings are numberless. I vow to liberate them all. And you vow to keep coming back until everybody's liberated. Taking on that suffering till it's gone. Only got eternity. What else are you going to do for an eternity? Yeah. Anyway. So, tree of life. So, make straight the way of the Lord. The way of the Lord in an Egyptian context means the spine. Tree of life. The spine. Sit up straight. Meditate. Make straight the way of the Lord. Make your spine straight. Your energy moves up, enlightening you, and learn how to be still long enough. So, garlic to keep away vampires. So these are sacred food. Garlic to keep away vampires or people who suck your energy. Hot peppers for flavor, so you get used to the presence of anger and have a greater tolerance for suffering in your own being and for others. Basically what hot peppers are, and that's why, it's not only a stereotype but an archetype of black people liking hot, spicy things, is what hot, spicy things do to you. What the spice is, particularly in peppers, it's a chemical burn. Say again?
It's because of the germs that you got.
Yes. But it's a chemical burn. What it's the plant is designed. What the plant designs the hotness in peppers to do is to drive away mammals. But if mammals eat it like us, what it does is it creates a pain and then an endorphin response. So it's a chemical burn. So if you keep eating them, you get used to that, and you have to have higher and higher levels if you like spicy stuff. There's certain things that, don't bother you anymore. Like Tabasco to me is like vinegar. Habaneros, I've eaten raw garlic. I can eat raw garlic cloves. But, it's intense, but you get used to it. Right? So the reason you get used to it is it has in your body a greater tolerance for anger and how you relieve it. All right? Greater tolerance for suffering in your own being and for others. So mint, stevia, sage, sweetgrass, cedar, amber, copal for medicine and prayer. So these are things that can be grown and cultivated, is the point, right? So, source of water. Remember to thank the water, bless the water before you drink it. Give thanks to the ground you walk on. All right, so there's an inner economy. Self-worth. How do you value yourself? How do you take care of yourself? Especially if it's toxic around you. So when I say, how many of you know what I mean by cultural capital? Bless the water. Cultural capital?
I can guess, but
Try a guess.
I'm thinking about how culturally diverse you are, what you see and what you learn from your environment. And
Okay.
everywhere you went in life.
Good. That is it partially. How many languages do you speak?
4.
4. Okay. So part of cultural capital, right, is if you have basically language goes like this, right? Let's say you have a cradle language, well, you all have a cradle language, right? So a human baby is born already pre-programmed to understand and take in every language that is spoken around it. Every language. How many of those 4 languages did you learn in school?
2.
Okay. So he had 2 languages spoken among his folks at home. And 2 in school. Plus acquiring whatever else he wants to do here, right? That's standard African runnings, that's standard European runnings. Only in America do they insist on 1 language. You can demonstrate, so cultural capital is also, so if you have your cradle language, okay, that's a language, so he had 2 cradle languages, right? You had,
Now, even when you learn English in the United States, they consider it as a second language.
Yeah.
They assume you only speak 1 language.
right, and that's Americans. Yeah, right, exactly. The phrase English as a second language. They're assuming that you have a primary single language, which is not the case in most of the planet. Only here. And part of that 1 language piece, I have to associate with clan-like behavior. Because the default setting on this continent before 1492 was multiple languages. Okay, even the pilgrims at Plymouth Rock, when they encountered native sachems, were surprised that the native chiefs spoke flawless English and French, as well as several different native languages too. The default setting on this continent was multilingual. The default setting in the world is multilingual. Humans were designed to be multilingual. We evolved in that environment. It is not natural to speak one language. You can demonstrate, and intelligence tests bear this out. More languages you speak, the more intelligent you are. Why would you intentionally limit people to one language? Why do you dumb them down? Control. You're thinking outside of the box by speaking multiple languages. So part of multilingualism is cultural capital. In fact, for example, if you learn in the university and they make you learn a foreign language, and it's usually a European language, right? Like Spanish, and then French, and then German. Right? Notice that? And then Russian. Sometimes they do Japanese, sometimes they do Chinese, etc. Right? For specific reasons, so you can be economically viable. Cultural capital, that means some people's cultures are considered more valuable than others. And legitimately more valuable. Okay, the reason I can say there was a Black Queen of England, because that Black Queen of England was from a royal family. Was she from a royal family in Africa? Were the Europeans considered an African royalty? No. Family is from Portugal, right? So this is still, so cultural capital. If your cradle language is what you learned at home, if your grandmother spoke another language other than English, you don't process English like a native speaker. Internally, in your head. So, if they didn't see my image as part of this class, what race would they assume I am? White. So am I speaking white? Right? I mean, my nephew went through the same process that we went through. When Samuel Jackson, I can give you the link for him introducing Sam Jackson. Sam Jackson went to Morehouse. Okay? But he said, I went, because, he and Justin had a lot of time to talk, and he said, I'm a swimmer. Black people aren't swimmers. Samuel Jackson's saying that. I wanted to be a marine biologist. Like, how many black people are swimmers and want to be marine biologists? Is that a black thing? I'm inflicted on you because a white lady said, when I said I want to be a marine biologist, but I don't know any black marine biologists, she said, that doesn't matter. You follow your passion. And I wanted to talk to Flipper. Because, it's obvious dolphins are intelligent, smarter than humans. Bigger brains. And it's not that they're bigger, it's where they're bigger that's important. But I've kind of adopted that as the central thing. So the idea of cultural capital. Here's what I mean by that. It's not just the way you speak. But I'm just pointing out, if your grandmother was not a native English speaker, you do not process English like a native speaker. Unless your grandmother was a native speaker of English. Right, not Odam. It's like, my grandma said I misremembers. My grandmother considered herself grandmother, as I had to. So, you know, they were used to talking to themselves because they said that they were used to speaking to the wisest person in the room. Grandma told me, "Good black don't crack. Good black don't crack." People said to me yesterday on the plane coming back from LA, "Wow, you don't look like your grandfather." Okay. You look like pushing 40 or 48. Nah, good black don't crack. That's all it is. Cultural capital is about acquiring a different class than you are, than you appear to be. Right? There's that movie 3 Degrees of Separation, where the dude, the black brother, pretends that he is Sidney Poitier's lost son to this white liberal couple, I think in New York or Connecticut or something like that. Now, any simple Google search will tell you Sidney only had daughters. What black man, or especially a West Indian black man, would not be proud of his son? I mean, not that he's not proud of his daughters, but he had 5 daughters, okay? So it would be a simple search to find out whether that is. But they take him in because he can talk a good game. He knows which fork is the salad fork. That's critical, right? Manners. Is it polite to belch? Will your host consider it an insult if you don't belch? Which fork is a salad fork? How do you wear your napkin? All these different things. What are you supposed to know about to speak about in conversation? So the idea about the university valuing certain languages over others, certain bodies of knowledge over others, that's cultural capital. The default setting of higher education in America is middle class. Okay? You are supposed to acquire middle class values, which means you're supposed to know about world history, history of other people, and be able to distinguish between different classes, not only of people, but of art, technology. Be familiar with those things. All these things can be acquired or simulated without actually having them. If you know what to say to whom. Okay, that's cultural capital. Appearing like you're a higher class than you are. Or acting as if you are from that class, but, not giving it a second thought. Just like there's certain assumptions with different forms of travel. It's a great line from David Bradley's book, The Chaney'sville Incident, where he talks about there's difference between the bus, Greyhound. He actually does his analysis on bathrooms.
Is this David Bradley at U of O?
That's right. The very same.
I know him.
Yeah.
I took classes from him. He's a wonderful teacher.
Did you read Chaney'sville? Did he use that as a text?
He used that.
Chaney'sville Incident, great piece. But he talks about within the Chaney'sville Incident, like if you look at the bathrooms in public transportation, he says, if you doubt that America is a class society, just flush, don't visit the institutions, flush the johns. You go to Greyhound bus station, go to the bathroom. That's different from the Amtrak station. That's different from an airport. Okay? And the mode of travel. You need money. More money to go to an airport. They even have private clubs. They have all this different stuff that they don't have in bus stations and train stations. Okay? There's a class assumption built into that. And how you're supposed to act. You're supposed to be self-regulated. Definitely. Especially, This ain't a weapon, right? But I had to be screened. So I have to take my shoes off, make sure I ain't got more than 3 ounces of liquid. Don't say, "Hi, Jack," to my friend across the room. That's cultural capital. How do you act in certain situations? You know, old school, we called it home training. Are you polite to your elders? Do you recognize your elders? Do you give the nod to a black person on the street? Were you raised right? Cultural capital, different forms of cultural capital, right? So the language is that of finance, but it's also how you carry yourself as royalty or not, right? So cultural capital. Go to screen, go to slide again, please. Thank you. So there's hidden, cultural capital is wisdom, hidden knowledge that can't be taken away. All right? Then there's the other outer economy of the world. So the economy divorces or disconnects you from yourself and your neighbors, and it's a false economy, but it's the one that we have to be beholden to if we want to be economically viable. So we're basically facing this whole dual consciousness, and that's part of what Du Bois is talking about. Because if you read people who are writing from that era, like I was showing you with County Cullen and Langston Hughes and Harrison, they're writing on a level that you don't see you see very few black people operating at that level these days. And if they are, they're kind of like media stars, which is actually okay in the case of, you know, if I happen to like them, like Cornel West or Michael Eric Dyson or, you know, Angela Davis, numerous people, right? I even like some of the conservatives if they write well and put an idea well, even if I don't agree with the idea. But tell me this. Can you compare has anybody ever compared the writing between Thurgood Marshall and Clarence Thomas? I don't know that they have. I mean, can you even find anything that Clarence, I mean, he must have written something. I'm thinking somewhere. Possibility, right? So, this economy, for example, then the financial economy, any economy that divorces you from yourself is a false economy and subject to failure. So when you think about what are you investing in, or are you invested, or what you're invested in. So as an example, talking about progress. Part of the Great Migration of the 20s was that we have these definitions of what is considered progress. So apparent progress and real progress. So making the distinction between different forms of progress. So apparent, clearly seen or understood, appearing to show particular qualities, directly observed or measured, but not taking into account factors or effects that should be allowed for example, distortions caused by the measuring instruments themselves. What I like about the dictionary is if you get the concept, then you can apply it immediately, or at least be able to work on it. So apparent looks like it's immediately obvious, but it also could be a distortion of what you're looking at. So you also have to understand that if you're creating a construct that says we're measuring intelligence, we're measuring civilization, and you're thinking, okay, I think any non-white person is inherently inferior, you're going to design an instrument that proves that, and vice versa. All right? So, what's progress then? So as an example, Eugene Clan apparently disappeared after 24 according to the Eugene Public Record. That's the one remembered out loud in the newspaper, but there's another one to be found in the libraries if you sleuth. Okay, so you got to look at who's doing the measuring and what's their interest in the outcome of the measurement. Because according to science, you're supposed to be open to what happens, whether it confirms your theory or not. Right? Because it changes. It's supposed to change. Progress. So, motivation affects perception. So, if a pickpocket sees a saint, he sees only his pockets. So, if you're going to measure progress in the Black historical narrative, if we're socialized to think in European terms, we think axiologically, using counting and measuring rather than symbolic imagery and rhythm. Okay? So, if you're going to measure progress in English terms, then what are you looking for? Wealth. Business. Right? We're all theoretically free, right? Oh, we got a black president. I have a black vest in the cleaners, but is that relevant? All right. So, for example, 50 years after emancipation in 1913, there are 9.8 million black Americans owning over 500,000 homes, operating 937,000 farms, managing 40,000 businesses. Cumulative wealth was 700 million. Around 1913. Now, the last time I checked, and this is in the context of reparations, which we'll cover more next term, but in the early 21st century, so in the aughts, black Americans in discretionary income. So you know what discretionary income means? That's money you have to spend past your bills that you have a choice with. Play money. Right? Black Americans' discretionary income alone made us the 9th largest economy on the planet after California. It was something like 800 billion. Is that progress? Well, in those terms, it's progress. All right? In those terms, it'd be progress. To be the 9th largest economy by yourself on the planet. But here's the problem. All right? Like, I wouldn't mind a reparations check. You know, I could use the 800 grand, roughly. Sure. I have direct descendants that were slaves. Yeah. 800 grand? Sure.
They earned it.
Huh?
They earned it.
I'd say. Yeah. And that's at the most conservative level, right? But here's what happens. Even if I were to get a reparations check, how we've been socialized to deal with our money is 99 cents out of every dollar that the black community spends goes outside of the community and never returns. To contrast that with the Jewish community, the Chinese community, and the Latino community. Those dollars can circulate within those communities up to 5 times before leaving. Internally, because they're buying between themselves, selling between themselves. Okay? We send 99 cents of our dollar out, and it never returns. Okay? We spent, Chrysler designed a car endorsed by P. Diddy. So we spent most of our money on entertainment, cars, not real estate, not saving. When we were basically spending $1 billion on electronics, $1 billion on electronics and entertainment, We spent $300 million on books, and I know I personally spent $5,000 on books, and not because I'm a college professor. Because I was raised to have our own libraries, all right? So cultural capital, all right? What do we do with our money? What do we do with our money? So, counting and measuring. So, 700 million in 1913, 800 billion in 2005. That's progress. All right, so in 1920s, the number of black-owned businesses grew to 74,000. Little 10-year period. So progress. So when you have a man, though, in the White House who champions the Klan, as well as segregating federal employees in their quote-unquote best interests. So what is that best interest? Black federal employees and white federal employees shouldn't get together because, wait, they're federal employees. Is it in the interest of the company? How is it? Well, it's Wilson, right? So whatever. What effect does that have on your spirit? Some black people felt they'd been betrayed. So, for example, even Booker T. Washington, who was, the staunch integrationist, I've never seen the colored people so discouraged and bitter as they are at the present time. Yeah. So, meanwhile, during this time, we're creating banks, insurance companies, various other businesses. For example, Madam C.J. Walker, the hair thing, the hair millionaire. So black soldiers are fighting for America in World War I. So, for example, this quote, secret information concerning the black American troops. Conclusion. We must prevent the rise of any pronounced degree of intimacy between French officers and black officers. We may be courteous and amiable with the last, but we cannot deal with them on the same plan as with the white American officer without deeply wounding the latter. We must not eat with them, shall not shake hands or seek to talk or meet with them outside of the requirements of military service. We must not commend too highly the American truth, particularly in the presence of white Americans.
That's interesting considering he's an academic. He was the head of major universities.
Yeah.
Wilson.
Yeah. Make a point of keeping the native cantonment temporary accommodations for troops population from spoiling the Negroes. White Americans have become greatly incensed at any public expression of intimacy between white women and black men. Oh, yes. We don't need any more Alexander Dumas. General Pershing. In Lerone Bennett's They Came Before the Mayflower. So, the birth of Negro History Week. Carter Woodson started Negro History Week as the second week of February, bookending Frederick Douglass's birthday and Lincoln's birthday. It was expanded to a month after the Watts riots in '65. Kwanzaa would be invented in '66 along with Kawaida, but before we get ahead of ourselves, depression is collaborating with the enemy. And she was referring to the emotion, not the economic condition in which you should not indulge in the emotion. So, as an example, the Great Depression is what everyone focuses on about the market crash and the connections to the current market crash. And even though we're theoretically in recovery, we should also understand how markets crash. If you don't understand that, then you can be subject to attack on a very basic level. So if you've noticed through the definitions based on a certain agreed upon fictions, not so much reality. So while many focus on hard times, job loss, companies and banks falling or failing, people continue living and learning, as they always do. So knowledge, it's a form of wealth. So financial, media, cultural, technological, and other types of literacy will also still be key to survive. Now, while it's useful to know how to survive without the technology of infrastructure, don't assume it's going to collapse. But it might. And if it did, do you know how to live without electricity? Okay, well, if you have lived without electricity, it's not so big of a stretch. But if you haven't, you know, do you have a stash of water? Do you have a stash of food in your home? So the strategies people use to survive: rent parties, cooperative economics, pooling resources, work to see people through. So when America catches cold, this is an old Bill Cosby line, but it's probably old when he said it, so it's probably part of the University of the Hood hidden curriculum. When America catches cold, black people get pneumonia. So last to be hired, first to be fired. You have to be twice as good as to be considered equal, were basically lessons coming from old school folks who survived the Great Depression. So unemployment rose to 25% of the labor force. Now, when they consider that bad, there are some of us who are basically living under those conditions now. So black unemployment was 50%. So part of that is, okay, well, how do you survive? But the national income dropped from $81 billion in 1929 to $40 billion in 1932. So more than half. What's the current GDP?
I'm just guessing it's trillions.
Well, they were saying, right? That's part of the. Any of y'all following the sequester conversation?
Yeah.
Notice who's following it, notice who's not. You all need to follow this. You need to know this.
I think it's like 8 trillion for the GDP.
The U.S. economy, well, with if you include corporations, which is outside of the government, so it's like 15 trillion.
15 trillion.
Now, here's what part of what caused the market crash. Right? Banks. Okay, so let's say I buy your house. You sell it to him for double. Right? I could take that note, sell it to another bank because it's an income flow, double that money. Now, multiply that out. Okay? And so what happened was the net worth of the planet, everybody. So if America is like the biggest economy in the world, and America is worth between $6 to $10 trillion, they mortgage and bet on a $65 trillion bet. Of course it's going to collapse. It's not real. Right? So the fact that you can have an economy where people can make money that ain't there,
Right. It's an artificial.
more than the planet, like, okay. So they're saying now student loan debt is bigger than all other credit cards and forms of debt, more than houses combined. So they're creating a class of dependent people. Right? Okay, so understand, all right, that ain't going to be sustainable any more than betting on 5 times the worth of the planet is going to be sustainable.
Well, the stock market is an artificial economy anyway.
Right. Okay, so that's an artificial economy that we're living under, right? And so, yes, it's bound to collapse one way or the other, but that then makes it more plain why you should also look at having stuff that's real, even if that's just knowledge, because you can't say knowledge ain't real. Okay, but survival skills is real.
You know Kurt Saxon? You heard of him?
I've heard of him, yeah.
Yeah, that's a guy worth looking into.
Yeah. Copy that. 4. Got it. All right, so 20 million Americans turn to public assistance programs. No, we have more than that now. All right, so rural southern blacks. So for example, cotton drops from 18 cents per pound for a 100-pound bag, 100-pound sacks, or basically that's 432 a month, which is, hey, that's what I lived on when I first lived in Eugene in unemployment. So less than 6 cents or $18 a day to $6 a day or 144 a month. Okay, so when you think about what is your economy, what is it that you get compensated for? And what happens when the bottom drops out of that? So, mechanization made many jobs gone to machines, gone to white people, or gone out of style. So this caused a migration of blacks from rural south to urban north. Again, another great migration. Mechanization and Caucasianization of black jobs. For example, blacks only were allowed to do street cleaning, garbage collection, domestic work, discrimination, so you pay kickbacks to white foremen to keep your factory job, which then goes to a white man who pays no kickbacks. So part of the piece then is that they use a lot of the same old tricks, or different tricks actually today, but many of the same tricks the tricks that they use today were used back then. So mechanization, that's machines, but what happens when the machines become computers? All right, white women competed with black women for work as maids, cooks, and housekeepers. Black women were paid $5 a week to work in the slave market, wait on the sidewalk for working class white women to pick you up on the corner for day labor. Wow, that sounds familiar. Except the demographic has changed. Copy that. And so in the South, they said no not jobs for niggers until every white man has a job. Niggers back to the cotton fields. City jobs are for white folks. Southern Railroad brotherhoods, unions intimidated and attacked and murdered black workers to take their jobs. So to actually have then a union of sleeping car porters was a dangerous move, but begins back in this time. 12 black firemen were murdered for their jobs in various parts of the country. Probably more than 12, but we know of that. So just imagine if that would happen, in those desperate times, what could happen now. So get your midterms. They'll still be available in the office. And I will see you on Wednesday. Thank you.